Well, hi guys, hopefully this finds you very well. My name's Paul, this is Plan Z, and the next bunch of videos is going to be 20 of them to start with. There'll be 40 eventually that are using the thumbnail that I've used here. We'll have a different number on the front. I've chosen 1001 for the Plexi. It's GT1000 amp deep dive time. I've been messing around, doing little test runs, trying out, making little experiments, and now I think I'm kind of ready to start diving into the amps. And we're going to start off with the first of 5 patches that eventually we're going to sound check. Where we come in, I have got a feedback set up in here, but I might change this. I'm not so happy with how the feedback is working inside of the Plexi, but that could just be I don't like the feedbacker. But there we go. I'm sorry to start off with a negative. Everything from here should be fairly positive. Now in this one I'm coming all the way to the end where we got GT1000 cabinets, we got the Ribbon 121 on the left, in a medium in the center, obviously using the GT cabs from the last update for the Marshall. And then in this side we're set up the same, but we've got an SM57 in the middle but 3 centimeters off axis. Just before that I've got a side chain where we've got some reverbs running wet dry. I put a compressor at the end of my effects there. We've also got in here, just out of interest, Eddie Van Halen's little pitch shift +9 -9 on the fine tune. We can have a little, let's turn that on. I want to talk to you about the EQ, guys. Now, we're going to get into the amp in just a little second, but the EQ is really important to how all this sounds. I've done a short series of videos that help us if you're not understanding how to do EQ inside of a modeler. The series could help you. Now, I'm not a guru, but what I have done over the last year and a half is done God knows how much experimentation on a GT1000 that I think I've found a sweet spot that's I'm really liking how it sounds on the cabs. So the EQ starts like this. We cascade. We deal with low frequencies first, low mids, and then higher frequencies after the amp. And if we want to boost the lows that we've cut, we boost them after the amp. So it looks like this. In the first page, nothing is changed. We use parametric EQ. And in this amp, these frequencies will change depending on the amps. But I found 160 is a honker. Take it out on a Q of 16, surgically remove it. -6 dB, half the value of it. Do the same with 250 Hertz. And I take a cut, low cut at 125 to leave space for my drums and my bass to have fun. Now in the EQ next to it, again you'll notice nothing's been changed. You'll find when you remove these frequencies like this, you'll solve your problems in your booming cabinets, but you actually don't need to boost your level. You actually get more presence by just removing those frequencies. So the other frequencies we remove here is 315 in this amp, using the same technique. Then here I'm taking out 500, and because I've removed those honkers down here, I only need to take 6 dB on a Q of 8, and it feels great. All right, now we can play around with that to change our tone, but that's my starting point. Now here we deal with the high ends, but first let's talk about the third one in the cascading stages. So what's happening here is I'm dropping the level by 2, and that's because I'm boosting 800 Hertz to get some low end oomph, some growl, about 4 dB on a Q of 2, and here I'm going for 1.6 dB to get some bite on a Q of 2 again, plus 4 dB. Okay, now I use a parametric EQ because those 2 frequencies there you can't select on the graphic EQ. Boss, please, if you're a bit like an ex of mine, you give us a full frequency unit, but you only allow us to choose certain frequencies. She became an X quite quickly. Please help us, give us more frequencies that we can choose. Another couple of EQ blocks and divides would be fantastic, please, boss. Thank you very much. Anyway, moving swiftly on, there's no high-low cut in here. Remembering the low cut's been done in the first EQ at 125 Hertz. Now here we're dealing with the highs. So I do my high cut to 4K. I'm taking out 4K is an offender in here that I wanted to take out on the GT1000. And if you want to know how to hunt around for these frequencies, watch those EQ videos if you don't understand how to use the parametric EQ. Then I'm taking out 250, which is a bit of a screecher. And here then, once I've taken all of that out, I'm aggressively boosting the highs that I have left to give me some crispiness. I don't touch the overall level, but I am boosting the lows by 2. So let's start off with our low gain amp. Let's go into the neck pickup, turn the gain pot all the way up, tone pot all the way up. Just to pull the gain pot back a touch. Nice, so we've got the gain pot on about 9 at the moment. We've got the gain here at 60. We've got the sag at 7. Now with the Plexi, if you're finding you're having trouble with your highs, even if you've tried the EQ set that I've suggested, increase your sag. It's a saggy amp, it needs it. We've got the resonance at 5, largely because I like what it does to the mids and the low mids, but also because I like how it affects distortions in the high end. It does change the texture of them. The level of this amp is at 48. Now with the Plexi, before we go to the next page, I've started us off with a really simple EQ set in the second part of the amp to help us keep things really simple as we move through these patches. And then in the next videos you'll see how this amp is very, very different to all of the other amps. You can, with a Plexi, boost your low ends quite aggressively. In fact, I found when I had my Plexi back in the day, if you kept these knobs kind of balanced, you get a really nice mix of frequencies to play with on your tone pot and gain pot on your guitar. If you start taking the bass out or taking the highs out because you're scared it might be too trebly, you're going to end up with a sound that you're going to end up then needing to take the bass out because it's then not clear enough. But actually what you need to do with the Plexi is just bring things up, and in the second part of this video for the Plexi, to try and keep these videos short, we'll dial these around and try and get different tones from it, but you'll see there a bit clearer what's happening. But the thing I want you to understand in this video with the Plexi is, as we go through the stereo patches, you'll notice I make subtle changes, and it really impacts the volume a lot. Now here we're at 48 with everything on 80, but our gain is only at 60 because I wanted it relatively clean. Alright, when we go to the medium gain, so this amp has 2 gain stages. We have medium and high gain. Alright, let's go to the back pickup. Let's turn that back to about 7. So here, I've got everything to 80, the same as in the low gain, and when we go to high gain, it stays at 80, okay? But the level here is at 47, so 1 less. The gain is up at 60, so the same. The sag is a couple more at 9. Resonance is the same. When we go to the high gain, the gain will jump to 70. The sag will go to 10. The level will remain the same because we haven't adjusted anything here. All right. Now what I'm going to do is just quickly talk you through a couple of. No, I've just shown you the wet. So let's just. I'm going to save that patch. That's GT1000 now. So what we're going to do is I've got the same patch set up using Two Notes DynIR, and then we've got a bunch of other patches. So in this patch, I've set up 2 Plexis. So here all the EQs are more or less the same, yeah? But the amps are different. So here I've got the gain at 30, the sag up at 7, resonance at 5, level at 54. So this amp's slightly louder than the other amps. Because I've got this all at 70. Alright, so let me turn off the wets. Let's bring up that gain pot a bit. Let's come to the neck. Turn that up a touch. Now with the amp, we've got some interesting effects on this one for the wets here, by the way, in a moment. But for the amp, what I've done here is I've cranked it in this patch. I've got 100 on the gain, 10 on the sag, resonance is the same, the level's down at 26, look, because I've cranked everything up to 100. And you can do that with a Plexi. Sometimes you need to watch the highs and the lows, but generally you can do that. So let's go to the back pickup. This is our low gain, but it's actually, I think, a medium gain. Yeah, middle gain. And then here, let's go to... I can, if I want, have that a touch louder. You'll find it's very sensitive. 1 cent can make quite a difference. And to illustrate what happens, let's take these levels now down to 50. We're going to want to bump this. Okay. So now we've got a completely different tone. Okay, so you can get different tones from your Plexi. This is a bit more raucous. And if we go back to where we were, let's say about 30, and then crank this. It's slightly less crazy and a bit creamier. Alright, just want to check the highs here. Yeah, we're doing good. So I'm going to save that like that. But before I do, let's talk about these wets. Now I've actually got in here, just so that we can understand the patches together. I've got, what have we got? We've got the synth in here in this divide with the delay before it. So I can engage the synth. And that just sends signal out and it doesn't come back into GT1000, okay? But in these wets here, what I wanted to do was have something that would do 2 jobs. When I'm soloing in the high gain, I want it to sound crazy and add crazy around me. So I'm going to go to the back pickup. I'm going to have the heel back on the feedback of the delays, okay? So when the heel's back, I've got the feedback on 0 for both of the delays. I've got 2 delays going on, a reverse one and a normal one. This one's got an octave before it and a chorus after it, and this one's got a fuzz after it and a flanger. All right, they go into a reverb. So what's happening is, we're in the middle of a track where, I don't know, what we're going to do. And it adds some crazy around me. Are you with me? But in the low gain, when we come to, I'm just going to come to the neck pickup, for example. And turn it off. So when the delay is off, there's still the flanging coming through, okay? So it gives me a little bit of extra if I turn the wet off. Okay, and when I add on my effects, that is obviously going to move around me. But actually, for me, the real trick with this is when I extend the toe and the delays go to a point where they oscillate. So what I'm going to do is just going to strum a chord. I'm going to now push this to the point of, I think it's 96 on one side, 95 on the other, where I got it to a point where they're oscillating and their level remains manageable, okay? So I'm just going to strum a chord. Now when I disengage the delays but leave their feedback up, they're still feeding into the reverb. At this time, I drop the level of the reverb a little bit and leave them hanging behind me. Okay, so now I can, if I want to, add an external reverb. I'm going to bring it in with me. Okay, so now I can disengage from my wets and go to my totally cranked one. Okay, and I can start my jam. So it's quite a nice patch. I quite like how that gives me some really atmospheric dynamics with my Plexi, and I like how it cleans up, and how when you crank it, if you manage your EQs right, it sounds fantastic. That sounded really cool in the room. So what we're going to do now is look at the first of the stereo patches. So patches 2 and 3 are set up the same way in terms of the amps. So the EQ sets are the same, dealing with the same things in the same places. But this amp, I want you to pay attention now to the differences between the two patches will be the gain and the gain stages. So here we've got a medium gain with the gain at 30 that goes to a low gain with the gain at 30. The amp set, and this will, and one of the reasons I've started with the Plexi is, one, I used to have a Plexi and a Vox, so I'm going to be, getting the Vox in early as well, is that to describe the differences between getting the best and how to get the best spread. Now this will be different depending on the amps, but the strategy should be the same, okay? Now I've avoided needing to use different EQ sets to get a nice spread, because we've got, when we engage both amps here, we've got our spread at 50 and that helps, but still, if the amp sounded the same, it would sound like a mush. So on this side, you'll notice everything here will be the same. I've got the sag slightly different, so I'm not competing with my main patch 1. I've got the gain slightly lower for the same reason, so I can get a different tone. But here, it's at a level of 61, with everything at 75. And here, it's at a level of 68, so it's quite a difference, with everything just 5 cents less on this side at 70, okay? But the reason I've got them different is so that when I play them together, they're occupying slightly different frequency ranges, okay? So and to level those frequency ranges with the Plexi, you have quite a difference, very different to the let's say a tweed or a twin, where actually you'll find there's only 1 or 2 cents difference when you kind of push things in a slightly different way. But here there's quite a difference, nearly 10 cents. Well, I'm exaggerating there, more like 6 or 7. All right, so that in here is how that amp is dialed in. We've got 2 of them, and one of the nice things here is I've got this amp where the gain, we're not pushing the mids here, but I can select the other amp to come up the middle, which gives me a bit more poke. Sorry for those chords there. Just gives me a bit more poke, okay? So I can kind of select which one I want up the middle, or have both, or stick one either side. And when they go either side like that, this one's going into a ribbon 121 and this one's going into a 57, okay? So let's just bring them both up the middle and talk about the effects in this patch. So I've got some wets. When I turn them on, we have an auto wah come on. We're in bandpass filter, rate 50, depth 50, level 100. Got the resonance around 68, something like that, 60, 68. Here, so the resonance at, 48. The frequency around 68. It's not 68, it's 61. I wish they made zeros and eights easier to distinguish between. Try, and 10% of the direct mix I find helps. Now that, when that comes on, has a chorus come on. So the chorus has got the rate, depth, there you are, so you can see it. I won't keep reading them out like the shipping forecast. It must do your head in hearing that much of my voice. Okay, so it's doing. Let's we've got a compressor down the front here, so I can stick on a bit of compression, just using the Boss comp, quite soft compression going on, 40 sustain, 80 on the attack, 47 on the level, 10 on the tone, 3.1, and 30 I'm doing the shipping forecast again. Now we can stick on our wets. Let's have a little look at that. Now this wet here has got a spring reverb, and over here we got a space echo. Now space echo, I've got control over the feedback, which I'm running into an XOD. Now we might experiment in the second video for the Plexi and take this down the front, get a different drive, so we've got options, and turn on here. I've put a CE1. We might just turn on this preamp and get some distortion that way. Okay, so there's my settings there, and as usual we're going into a compressor, and it's the cab set up the same way but using the blend for the wets. Okay, and we've got the compressor set up the same way more or less. Alright, for the end here, it's always going to look about the same, that, unless I'm doing an effect. So I've got that will add colour and craziness. When it's fully cranked, and when it's back, it's just adding a bit of stereo colour. Alright, so the only other thing in this patch to flag is there is a 60s fuzz. Let's come to the neck roller or tone off. We'll hear more of that in a little bit. I've got the tone roll back to 4, pushing the gain to 80, level to 80, and I do like to push the bottom. It will be slightly different depending on the amp, but here I'll usually have about 2% of my dry coming through. Okay, so that's that patch done and dusted. Let's just save it in case I made a change, and we'll look at the last patch to look at before we sound check, which is the stereo version. If you remember, I said here in the one we were just in, the gain was at 30. Here we are at 70, which is a bit more than the gain is in the first patch we looked at, right? That we were at 60. So, cranking the sag, the resonance the same, the level 55, and I'm doing the same thing, 70 on this side. So we've got what, 55 versus 49. So there's about 6 dB difference when you crank the mids, lows, presence and highs by 5. Alright, roughly. So in here we've got a phaser where I'm just using the script. Let's turn our gain pot back a bit. Okay, let's just turn that off for a mo. Then we've got our reverb. So our reverb is set so that when the heel is back, we've got a short tail. Just using the hall, I like to take some of the tone back, densities in the middle. I like to cut the lows and the highs quite aggressively and then bring them through using the low and high damp. I don't know if you don't know how the low and high damp work, and it's a bit of a mystery to you, let me shed some light. Think of it as working the same way as your low and high gain work on your EQ block here. What you're doing is you're cutting the frequencies that you don't want with this, and then making the most of what's left behind with this. So, for example, if we wanted to make this reverb sound lighter, let's just bring up that tone part. Let's bring up the heel. So now we've got a bit more of it. If we add the highs now, it will be brighter. Let's take them away. Let's boost the lows. Let's get it. That's quite a nice place there. But I'm just going to pull that back a touch to there. Okay, so you see how I balanced that slightly? You can make it brighter or duller, and it's nicer, warmer, more analog feeling when it's duller. No modulation in here, and no direct mix because it's a wet channel. But the reverb, let's bring this heel back, is again, we're controlling the feedback, and we have a reverse delay here that's going into a distortion block, XOD, same as in the other patch. But this time we go into a normal stereo chorus, okay? And what that does is if I... it will just do the obvious one repeat. But I can increase the heel and just take the end of a note, disengage the delay, and that will now hang there. I'll play around with that as an atmosphere, and in the jam I'm going to use it where in this patch we can move our signal around. So I'm going to take a loop in a moment where I'll be on the both pickup position and I'll play this line with just the reverb on and cranked. And what's really nice there is you can hear the guitar in the right. And if you're in headphones, you'll hear the reverb in stereo. So we're hearing, our focus on it is in the left. So the first loop I'll take with that. Do you know what? We could just take the loops now, but hang on. So the second loop, what I'll do is I'll pull back the heel on the reverb, engage the delay, so we just have one repeat and a shorter reverb, and I'll play in the other side. Okay, and I'll be playing that part, and that will be creating different movement in the mix. On its own feels really intense, but when it's with the beats and the bass and everything else, it cuts through really nice. So that's what's happening in there. We obviously go through to the Marshall cabs, and we've got the compressor on at the end here. Let's just turn all of those bad boys off, and let's just hear this in stereo. What I might do is just to start us off, I'm going to bring my gain pot back. I'm going to turn up the reverb. Just get my gain pot set right. come to the both pickup positions where I've probably got the pickups of around 7. Okay, let's give a loop a go. Oh, I ham-fisted that. I'm going to start that again, sorry. Go to the GT1000 patch. I think I'm going to stick on a tube screamer and a treble boost, stick on my verbs. I might even, yeah, let's stick on the Eddie Van Halen thing, go to the back pickup. Take off the tube screamer, gonna take off the Eddie thing, just come in with the verb back pickup, gain pot on around 9, tone pot the same, 3, 4. Saved in a different bank at the moment to make the changes easier. So here we're gonna stick on that reverb I told you about. And I'm gonna chuck it into the amp on the right hand side. Go to the other side, engage the delay but pull the heel back. Guitar line we took at the beginning. Let's try that. Nice, so I don't have to use my hands. I'm hands free, guys, just using my looper. I think what might be nice would be to go to the main patch on Two Notes now. gonna stick on a fuzz. On the medium gain, I might have my treble boost as well. Sorry for the abrupt ending, I'm just aware this session's quite long, so I'm going to round it up. Just want to hear the chorus on the low gain Plexi. Chuck in some HX effects, reverb. And there I'm going to end the session. Hopefully we'll be able to hear in this video and understand how, not only how I've dialed it in, but also then how that sounded in a mix. For the last year and a half, for those of you who've been following me through this torturous journey, and I'm sorry for putting you through it with me, but I needed to be posting online so I could hear the audio and compare the audio through YouTube's compressors with other artists and other things, and try and get myself to a point where things are sounding better. Hopefully things are at a point where they're sounding better, and my amp deep dive can feel like a serious amp deep dive, because you'll feel like you've come in here and you've gone, yeah, I can get my GT1000 sounding like that. He was using both GT cabs on his dry and dynamic IRs, and they both sounded cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to that GT1000 patch. We're going to stick on the treble boost. We're going to come crashing in with that last bit where I just play through the two lines. So I'm going to start out playing that, and then I'll go to the other line with the Eddie thing on. Let's see how this sounds, just treble boosted, medium gain. Going to come crashing in with the lot. I say there, I'm the weakest element. I'm the one that's playing things not so well. And actually the tones, if I'm playing them right, get my tone pots right now, things should sound quite cool. So I just need to work on that. Once I've got these amps up to a level, I can start then working on my basses, my acoustics. At last. Okay, so I'll catch you a bit later. Hopefully you found that interesting. And if you're trying to get better results from your GT cabs, that's how I've gone about it. And I'm loving how that sounds. So I'll catch you a little bit later. Take care. Bye-bye.